Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
Well, joining us now to discuss the current state of affairs in Gaza and what Israel's next steps may be is Colonel Miri Eisen, a senior fellow at the International Institute for Counterterrorism. Colonel Eisen, always a pleasure to have you with us on ILTV. I want to start by asking about the current diplomatic push in Washington. Do you see potential for a deal to be made here? I mean, we hear they're discussing the day after in Gaza, and Witkoff stated the pressure is on Hamas. But from who? What evidence is there that Hamas will actually make a deal, assuming our own government does agree?
That's exactly the core question that all of us are asking. Who actually pressures Hamas? And I think one of the things we all have to ask every day, this isn't about the Palestinians, about the people in the Gaza Strip, it's about Hamas. Pressuring Hamas can come from Qatar. Pressuring Hamas can come from Egypt. Pressuring Hamas can come from their own people. But sadly, the United States does not pressure Hamas, meaning they don't have any kind of way to actually impact them. And even worse than that is that Qatar has two different voices. Hamas has two different voices. Hamas sitting in Qatar, they have one voice. Hamas sitting in the Gaza Strip, the ones holding the hostages, the ones who are the terror organization, actively every single day fighting against us, who really impacts them? I don't even think that Hamas and Qatar right now impact them. So it's the key question that there isn't a clear-cut answer to.
And of course, we're in a situation in which Hamas doesn't really have much to gain from their own perspective from making a deal. Speaking of the day after in Gaza, I mean, what kind of terms should Israel be looking at, should they be demanding when it comes to post-war governance in Gaza?
Element number one is that Hamas is not part of it in any way. And when I say in any way, that means both, of course, the whole military terror infrastructure, but they can't be the ones who run it in any way. This is a difficult aspect because Hamas will still exist. What that means is that other individuals, other leaders, both Palestinian and others, are the ones who need to run it. If there was somebody who would just step in, Emily, and do this, it would be a lot more easy. Nobody wants to step into the quagmire called the Gaza Strip. So as such, I think it's going to be a combo. Both locals, not Hamas, but locals, together with other elements much more moderate in their tone and what they're willing to do. I don't think any international organization, let alone any Arab country, will bring in money and actually redevelop Gaza until you have a real, clear, stable leadership that is not Hamas.
Now, on the diplomatic front, of course, Israel is facing tremendous criticism, especially after this strike on Nasser Hospital. And there's an ongoing probe as to who gave the orders to fire tank rounds versus the approved use of force, which was, I believe, a precision drone strike. Despite that, there were at least six terrorist casualties, as we're learning. Has Israel gone too far? I mean, are the standards too lax when it comes to dealing with civilian casualties in Gaza?
I think that where we are right now is that militaries make mistake, and my heart can go out for those who were killed. In that sense, I think that one of the things that differentiates us, and I'm proud of it, is that immediately the state of Israel, including the Prime Minister, the IDF, immediately took responsibility. We didn't push it off, and we're probing into it, and people are going to be held, soldiers, commanders are going to be held accountable. Having said that, 22 months of fighting, in all of these months, every single time, this is not the first time, but every single time we have been held accountable for having killed people who were not involved. For an attack like this one here, we have probed ourselves. We look at ourselves. We never, on purpose, target civilians. The terrorists surround themselves with the civilians. We could have a whole discussion about attacking in the first place, terrorists who hide themselves inside a hospital. But there's no question that we're only targeting terrorists and they hide themselves inside every arena. We always have to be better, and we have to check ourselves so that we keep it always moral and above in all level that we can.
I think it's also an interesting point that I heard yesterday about the fact that Israel's been fighting on so many different fronts, and yet you haven't seen these same phenomena occurring in other places. You didn't see Israel striking hospitals in Iran. You haven't seen it in Yemen. You haven't seen it in Lebanon. So it isn't really always about what Israel's targeting. It is truly about the use of human shields, as you mentioned. I want to jump a little bit to the operation in Gaza City. Where does this Gaza City operation stand right now, and what's the strategy for going in? Could it increase pressure on Hamas that works in Israel's advantage, or could it backfire?
We don't know the answer to that question, do we? That's why it's such a good one. But militarily, there's no question that when you go at Hamas, at their tunnels, at their cache of weapons, when you kill their operatives, when you show them for who they are, hiding and being inside the underground arena, hiding themselves underneath the civilians, that puts pressure on the Hamas in the Gaza Strip. If I was saying before, who puts pressure on the Hamas in the Gaza Strip? The IDF with its military actions. Will that backfire? I will say openly here, and I've stated it clearly, I don't hide behind this. I absolutely think that Hamas is so barbaric, so horrific, that Hamas would prefer, to execute hostages rather than have us get to them. And I say that because that is, I don't want to call it backfire. That is a sad aspect. The only way to pressure them is through the military pressure because nobody else does. But there's no question to me that they're so barbaric. They already did this in the past a year ago. And sadly, I think that they would do that again.
All right, well, we'll be following this story closely. Unfortunately, for today, we're out of time. I want to thank you, Colonel Miri Eisen, for joining us today.
Thank you.
ILTV is bringing you an exclusive interview with Mossab Hassan Youssef, also known as the Green Prince, whose father was a co-founder of Hamas. After years inside the movement, Youssef rejected Hamas's ideology and even served as an undercover agent for Israel's Shin Bet. While visiting the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, meeting with diplomats and policymakers as a fellow, he spoke with our very own Mayan Hoffman about Hamas and October 7th. Let's take a listen.
So the people who don't live there, they cannot make the connections. And the people who live there, they are afraid to speak.
So that's my question, my next question. You know, you managed to get out and to be able to speak about and really to condemn what you saw there. But, you know, how were you able to do that knowing you were turning against your family in some capacity and everything that you knew?
Well, actually, I did not see it that way.
Okay.
Because my intention was not set to turn against people. I turned against violence. That's a very, very different thing.
Did you think your family would back you?
Absolutely not. Because, as I told you, from childhood, I did much smaller things.
And they didn't back that. So
than opposing the Palestinian violence and the Palestinian nationalism that is leading to violence. And it was a very painful experience. They did not accept it. And obviously you can see, you know, how my family reacted today when I wrote the book. And in fact, I revealed myself to the public because I should have not been ashamed for doing the right thing, right? So for many people, they don't want to take the risk. From the early beginning, it was like, for me, if I don't take the risk, I'm going to die, basically. If I don't defend myself, I'm going to suffer. If I don't stand for who I am, it's going to be a problem. So I developed this mentality as a street boy, you know, and I really did not care. I mean, I was dancing with death on a regular basis, not only because of the violence of the Intifada. It's a very, very dangerous place. And just running for my life on a regular basis. And this is why from early childhood, and unfortunately, I had to see brutality, violence. It made me into something different. I started working, for example, when I was only 10, to help my mother financially, while all the leaders of the revolution enjoying the money, and my father in prison, my mother didn't know how to manage. So there was no way for me to turn against. I was not, even today, I don't think that I'm against my people. When I say, you know, for example, my people are not Palestinians, because when I was born, there was nothing written on my forehead, say Palestine. I was born innocent child.
Right.
Palestine and the Palestinians stole that innocence, stole that childhood from me, as they continue to steal it from all the children. Of course, it was not obvious to me at that time, but now the game is very clear. So we had to fight, I mean, the good fight, and I was never motivated by hatred. Even the days later on when I became part of the counterterrorism effort to stop the suicide bombing attacks, I had tremendous amount of power. At a very, very young age, I was walking down the street when I was probably like 22 or 23. I would have the Israeli Special Forces, and I would have also the Hamas militias, and they don't know that they're walking the same street, and both parties were protecting me. I had access to guns. Like, I mean, killing somebody, for example, at that time, I would get away with it because nobody would even dare to
Did you kill a lot
question.
of people?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Even my worst enemies.
Wow.
Even those who wanted me dead, I did not want them hurt. And this is for those who don't read my first book, for example. I had many cases where some of my enemies became targets for assassinations, and I knew about their locations. And the agency was just about to drop a bomb on their head, and I refused. So I know their location, but I'm not willing to kill them. That was the biggest challenge. And some of these people, actually the ones who still lead in Hamas, the most dangerous Hamas people, and today, I don't want to say I regret it. Their punishment at that time was just death. They're murderers, mass murderers. And if I did not insist on arresting them, Hamas would have not kidnapped innocent civilians to ask for their release.
And joining us now right here in studio is Mayan. Mayan, you sat down with him, you spoke with him. I want to know what his message could be at the debate at the United Nations over the Palestinian statehood, which will take place in September, right?
Sure. Well, I think that the most important message that came out of it with regards to Palestinian statehood is that this battle that Hamas has waged against Israel is not about borders. It is not about the land. It is actually about extremist ideology. What he is saying is that now is the wrong time to give the Palestinians a state because the Palestinians are not ready for statehood. They are still following this ideology, and certainly it is a reward to terrorism if there would be a Palestinian state.
It's so fascinating because of his background, and now he's here in Israel. How do Israelis perceive him being here and his message?
Sure. Well, I think there was a real sense of gratitude, both from Israeli leaders and officials and also from the public at large that knows his story and knows how courageous he absolutely must be to be able to speak out and continue even after October 7th to tell that story. So there was just a real sense of embrace about somebody that are so few and far between telling the truth at a time when so many people are not telling the truth about Israel.
Thank you, Mayan. And we know everyone can watch the full interview, your sit-down interview with him on YouTube, which will be released later today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
The Islamic Republic is under mounting pressure as Britain, France, and Germany held a second round of nuclear talks in Geneva, demanding Tehran scale back uranium enrichment and restore full cooperation with the IAEA. Failure to act before the end of August would prompt UN snapback sanctions, further escalating Iran's already precarious economic situation. However, according to initial reports, diplomats have failed to agree on a path for avoiding snapback sanctions after Geneva talks ended without a resolution, just days left before the deadline. The Islamic Republic insists it is negotiating with all its might, but accused the Europeans of lacking legal standing to trigger snapback and labeling the threat as a form of psychological warfare. The talks began just hours after another diplomatic debacle in Australia, after it was revealed that the regime was behind several anti-Semitic attacks in Australia, resulting in the Australian government expelling the Iranian ambassador. With the snapback mechanism's authority expiring October 18th, unless it's invoked, the regime continues to face mounting pressure over its rogue and extremist ambitions, whether nuclear or terrorism. As the hostages continue to starve in the Hamas tunnels deep underground and Palestinians suffer at the hands of the terror group, Pockets of Gaza do have food, and there is certainly a lot of it. So much of it, there's actually room for dessert. After a United Nations-backed report declared there's a famine in Gaza, ILTV's research proves the area the UN says there is suffering actually has bustling restaurants with hot food and desserts being served. Thanks to social media, ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian has been tracking it all. Let's take a look.
You probably heard the United Nations declare there's a famine in Gaza. You've probably also seen headlines that look like this. You've probably also heard UN officials say this.
It is a famine. The Gaza famine.
But here at ILTV, us as journalists, we want to understand why the evidence on the ground and the reality doesn't match the report that came out. We're seeing bustling restaurants with an enormous amount of food, desserts, and Hamas terror operatives stealing a lot of the aid. We decided to look into it ourselves. Take a look at what we found. The latest UN-backed report by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, also known as the IPC, warns of a man-made famine that's spreading. Now, the UN's definition of a famine refers to a population that faces widespread malnutrition and hunger-related deaths due to a lack of access to food. But here's what the report doesn't mention, the real evidence on the ground. Let's unpack it all. Let's take Gaza City for an example. According to headlines around the world and based on the IPC report, this is a location in the enclave that is officially suffering from famine. But every day for the last few weeks, I've actually been tracking and following about 3 different restaurants and businesses that have been posting real-time evidence to Instagram, and it's a very different picture. Take a look at Thailandi, a restaurant located in the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City. Since June, they've consistently posted on social media showcasing the variety of desserts they've been making to the wood-fired pizzas and pitas they've been selling every day. These videos are time-stamped on August 23rd. An ice cream shop called Pistachio, located in the same neighborhood in Gaza City, has posted about their pristine location since the beginning of June as well, with dozens of people flocking to the spot for the variety of baked goods, milkshakes, and ice cream they have, also with a timestamp on this Cinnabon from August 23rd. And another cafe called Eskana, located in the Rimal neighborhood of Gaza City, also time-stamped on August 23rd, showcases cakes smothered in chocolate and nuts and fresh fruit on the display used for smoothies. Now, I don't have to tell you that there are clear signs of food in Gaza City, a city the United Nations says is currently in a state of famine. But here's what else the UN is saying.
It is a famine that we could have prevented if we had been allowed. Yet food stacks up at borders because of systematic obstruction by Israel.
ILTV has been inside of Gaza 2 different times by 2 different reporters where they both saw the stacking of aid the United Nations is talking about here. On the ground, here's what their analysis is.
I'm here in the Gaza Strip and I'm at the distribution center where thousands of pallets of aids are just waiting to be distributed. This is literally, as far as the eye can see, you see humanitarian aid.
Sitting here in the boiling sun, Israel has enabled all of this aid to enter the Gaza Strip in order to help the people of Gaza. But once it enters this crossing or any of the others, the responsibility for the aid turns over to the international community, namely the United Nations.
Now, the report does say that 87% of UN trucks are being intercepted, quote, reflecting the extreme desperation of the population. But it does not detail the video evidence of armed gunmen sitting on top of these aid trucks, redirecting them. Now, we know that U.S. and Israeli officials continue to say Hamas is the one stealing the aid, with proof they say that backs up this claim. So here's the question. We understand that there is desperation on the ground in Gaza, but how widespread is it? And is it only happening in certain pockets? That's what this report is not being able to track down and target. How is it that we as journalists are supposed to understand something when the evidence on the ground is not adding up?
And it was the Islamic Republic of Iran that was behind a pair of 2024 anti-Semitic attacks in Australia. That's the word from Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese as he announced that Canberra was expelling Tehran's ambassador. The Australian president also said that its diplomats from Iran will be recalled and will move for legislation that will label the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terror organization. The announcement comes only days after Prime Minister Netanyahu sent a scathing letter to Albanese accusing him of failing to act against anti-Semitism in his country. and gave him a deadline of next month's Rosh Hashanah New Year holiday to act. At the press conference, Albanese said the Australian Security Intelligence Organization has now gathered enough credible intelligence to reach a deeply disturbing conclusion that the Iranian government directed at least 2 of the recent attacks on Australia's Jewish community. Let's hear what he had to say.
ASIO has now gathered enough credible intelligence to reach a deeply disturbing conclusion that the Iranian government directed at least 2 of these attacks.
And moving on, Hezbollah has quickly rejected the U.S. brokered deal between Israel and Lebanon for an end to the hostilities between the countries. The Hezbollah leadership said civil war is preferred to accepting foreign dictates and vowed that the terrorist group will not hand over its weapons to the Lebanese army. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
After the initial optimism expressed by the U.S. and Israel over the Lebanese government commitment to fully disarm Hezbollah, Hezbollah leader Qasem was quick to slam the plan while vowing to keep his arms. In a taped message played at a memorial for fighters killed in the war with Israel, Hezbollah leader Naim Qasem termed the deal between Israel and Lebanon foreign imposed.
وهذا القرار الحكومي اتخذ تحت الإملاءات الأمريكية الإسرائيلية. هذه الحكومة إذا استمرت بهذه الصيغة هي ليست أمينة على سيادة لبنان إلا إذا تراجعت عن قرارها، والتراجع فضيلة. السلاح الذي أعزنا لن نتخلى عنه، والسلاح الذي يحمينا من عدونا لن نتخلى عنه. لن نترك إسرائيل تسرح وتمرح في بلدنا وتقتل المقاومين وتصادر الجنوب.
And indeed, Hezbollah continues to make threatening moves against Israel in violation of the ceasefire agreement with Lebanon. The IDF confirmed that it killed a Hezbollah terrorist in the area of Tibnin in southern Lebanon. According to the army, the individual had been working to rebuild Hezbollah infrastructure in nearby Beit Lif. Israel has welcomed the Lebanese government's stated commitment to disarm Hezbollah by the end of the year. In return, Israel would carry out a phased pullback from Lebanese territory and end cross-border strikes, but that only if Hezbollah is actually disarmed.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. See you next week.